Everybody, welcome back. Locked On Bulldogs. We have your favorite episode of the entire week. John Garcia talking recruitment, and we got crystal balls dropping all over the place for Georgia on a number of high profile names, as well as recapping G-Day with his perspective in mind for a couple of guys that he called would be studs, and I think we already see the makings of it next on Locked On Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody. Locked On Bulldogs. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. I'm here with John Garcia Jr., recruiting expert extraordinaire. John, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good to be back on with you.
Yes, good to have you as well. The season is never over for recruitment with NIL and the changing landscape that's happening there, but especially with all these RG Day as well as other spring scrimmages and the like. Official visits are all over the place. And now we start narrowing the focus of some of the higher priority guys. So that's where I want to start. Dawgs Twitter is erupting right now, John. It is just wild as all get out because there are three names that are very, very important to dog fans because crystal balls, if you want to follow that sort of stuff, I like guys that are in the fold already, and I reserve myself. But if you like that sort of stuff, we got Ryan Wingo, wide receiver, out of Missouri, got a prediction for Georgia, as well as Jaden Riddell, tight end out of Missouri as well. And then Riola, who we all have talked about before. But all these crystal ball predictions are coming from Georgia. Tell us as dog fans, should we be excited about these three potentially being in red and black?
Of course. I mean, they're all borderline five-star players. Riola is certainly one. I think Wingo, depending on where you look, is one. And Riddell is the number one or two tight end, depending on where you look. So, of course, absolutely, there should be an excitement there. Even if there is expectation, it shouldn't lessen the excitement for prospects that will really move the needle. Obviously, Riola is where the conversation probably should begin because outside of kids from Atlanta or maybe North Georgia overall, I don't know if there's a recruit that's been to Athens more in this class than Riola. He's taken 7 visits to Georgia. Obviously, there's some privilege there. His father played in the NFL. There's a ton of successful family ties to programs and football at the highest level. So that's a part of it. But obviously, more importantly for this conversation, it means there's real interest. We've framed this thing as a Georgia USC battle with a sprinkle of Nebraska in there with all of those family ties to the Huskers. But really, it's shifted back and forth with Georgia and USC. And you don't take 7 trips across the country and kind of laud the competitive nature of the program in the process without really jumping into that consideration. I actually listened to a long podcast with Adam Gorney from Rivals and Dylan's father, who, of course, played in the NFL for a long time, offensive lineman. And it was all about sort of backing off and allowing Dylan to dictate where he's going to go and just kind of giving him the tools and resources to go get it. So if you want to be a great quarterback, let's put you in position to work with some great quarterbacks and go from there. So I just think this is all building up to sort of a storybook decision. And a lot of that, especially if it's truly Dylan's decision, it's got to point to Georgia or USC over Nebraska. I think he's a competitor. I think he wants to be in the thick of it, and there is no more in the thick of it than Georgia from a competitive standpoint at any position. And obviously, when you get to Saturdays, from a competitive standpoint, while Georgia's top dog, look, the SEC is still the top conference. So the schools that are going to be on that schedule, the exposure that comes with that is something that I think is going to be a little bit too much for him to pass up relative to USC and Nebraska. It's just not the same conversation, unfortunately, for those two, I guess, Big Ten schools, as we will talk about USC in that light here going forward. Just not quite the same. Even though there's familiarity, of course, with Big Ten country and Nebraska in particular, I don't see that being enough to compete with Georgia in the end. So it's no surprise to see Georgia trending, I guess, for a second time for Raiola, but there is a more final sense to it this time around because so many visits to all three schools are already in the books. So there's kind of an evaluation time for Raiola right now. And I think that's good for Georgia and probably not as good for Nebraska between these three. So I just think this is a Georgia USC deal with Georgia more of the comfortable and natural fit from an option standpoint. Although, again, Lincoln Riley is who he is. You wouldn't be shocked if he went there, but I do think the trends to Georgia have merit behind them. And especially if, again, it's up to Dylan in particular, I think Georgia's the team to beat.
I agree with that. We're going to come back after this, and we're going to talk about two other names of the crystal ball just to get to know them so that guys are familiar with them. But first, I want to let you about Built Bar. Built Bar is the tastiest protein bar on planet Earth. And right now, you can get an entire Built Bar order 15% off with promo code Locked On. Go to built.com. Marshmallow, crisp, tastiest protein bar. They taste like a candy bar. I couldn't find any. My co-host Daniel, he's not here today, but I couldn't find any when I went over to his house, tried to scrounge them up. They weren't there. All his kids got to them, and I couldn't have a bit of them. We got chocolate, we got brownie, we got fruit flavors, as well as this just in a masterfully done secret ingredient taste coming our way in the fall for kickoff. We don't know what it is. Here's what I'm gonna Dippin' Dots Rainbow. Dippin' Dots Rainbow Built Bar Protein Bar taste. That's what I want, but who knows what's going to happen. Built.com. And right now you can get them at Sam's Club as well as Walmart. They're floating around everywhere. 15% off, high in protein, high in fiber, low in sugar. Best tasting protein bars on the planet. John, the two other names that are leaning at best, or actually making noise, I should say. I'm not even going to put lean on there because that's too aggressive of a term. But Ryan Wingo, wide receiver out of Missouri, as well as Raydell, tight end out of Missouri. And like you said, two highly acclaimed 4-star tweeners. Again, Georgia just losing out on a flip of a tight end. And now Jaden comes in here as well as Wingo. So tell us who these two are and how they fit, or what flashes for them in the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, well, let's start with Wingo really quick because it's kind of the easier picture to paint. Look, we've talked about Georgia and trying to uptick its wide receiver talent overall, just relative to all the other positions that are just kind of gross, right? Tight end, quarterback, running back, pass rusher, defensive back, all these loaded positions. Receiver doesn't have that same cachet at this point. So this would be another guy who would help to reverse that and help push against it. And we've also seen them sort of have a type on the outside. You know, Wingo 6'2", he runs 10.6, big, long, fast, productive, and twitchy. Some of the same things we've said about a lot of the other Georgia targets and commitments in 23 now into the 24 class. And I don't know what's in the water up in St. Louis and Missouri, but they're producing great prospects, and Georgia is going to win more of those battles than Missouri for those top recruits in the Show Me State. So kind of fascinating there. Wingo just took his first visit to UGA, I think in March, so about a month ago. And wow, coming out of that trip, there was already plans for an official visit in the month of June. And a lot of the teams that were more familiar with Wingo, Missouri, of course, Notre Dame, even Tennessee, among those that are in the mix, it was like, Georgia finally got him on campus, and here we go. Now Georgia is going to be a true player for him. And I think McLendon's doing a really nice job back at Georgia, kind of re-emphasizing some of what made him great the first time around. So I think Wingo would be, you know, his white whale, his feather in the cap among elite wide receiver recruits in this class of 24, even though, again, the whole cycle has been really nice for UGA to this point. So we'll see. A couple officials are already booked for Wingo. Missouri is going to get their shot closest to home. We know that. Notre Dame always recruits St. Louis well. Those are kind of the early hurdles. And then Tennessee and Georgia have become the true SEC contenders here as more kids want to play in that conference. And then when you get to Riddell, I mean, he's literally said, I'm playing in the SEC. So it's a little bit easier sort of build that. Just a big, freaky tight end. I mean, a guy who plays wide receiver more times than not, kind of like Pierce Sperling from last cycle, but a little bit more filled out, a little bit more physically built. And he's younger, obviously, so he's got a whole nother year of ball, but before he gets to his college of choice. But there's real twitch with Riddell. He's just kind of a nightmare. You don't want to throw Brock Bowers comparisons out there, but this kid after the catch, you're kind of like, wait, that's a tight end? Again, not to the degree with Brock because he's his own alien, his own life form, all of those things. But Riddell will kind of make you at least go back and check. And being in that conversation is a really big deal. That's why some have him as the number 1 tight end. I think 2 or 3 at the lowest that he's ranked across all of the recruiting industry. And yeah, he said, hey, I want to play SEC ball. So this thing has, similar to Wingo, has shifted since he got to UGA. Again, he took a March visit, and from that point, I think other schools, Tennessee and Alabama are the primary contenders here. I think other schools have kind of felt Georgia's rise in this conversation. And you talk about a priority and it being timely. Not only is Hartley on the case, obviously great recruiter, has helped build elite tight ends every day, it feels like, at Georgia. But Kirby Smart is on this case too, and I think that's something that will help to separate Georgia, because while other head coaches are recruiting him, most notably Josh Heupel, between these 3, it's just different when the guy with the rings and the guy who's producing those tight ends simultaneously at the top is personally bringing you, just kind of information and the latest check-ins from a recruiting standpoint. You couple that with the fact that you did lose an elite tight end recruit the other day, and this becomes almost personal for Kirby. And those are the kind of recruits that it becomes even harder to edge him on, because he is a relentless recruiter in general. But when there's sort of a personal feel or a perceptional situation he's dealing with negatively, and that doesn't happen much with UGA, you see him digging in even more. And that's what's happened with Jaden Riddell out of Missouri. So I think Georgia, since that visit, has done a really nice job. And now there's, again, talks of an official visit to Athens in the summer. And this thing, to me, is more of a Georgia-Tennessee kind of deal. I think Alabama's been a little bit more up and down in this recruitment. So if it ends in the coming months or preseason, really good news for the East teams. If it does extend into the season, maybe Bama can get back into it. I know that they've gone through some staff turnover, so not the same group of coaches that have been recruiting him. Tommy Rees, the new OC there. So I think that kind of paints the picture with Riddell. But no doubt Georgia, after those 2 unofficials with Wingo and Riddell in particular, have really started to turn the tide of this recruitment, and they're going to grab official visits and sort of be the front runners from here on out for each of them. So not a surprise, but still big developments. And Georgia's had to do the work here. They hadn't visited until March. So you have to take advantage in setting that up and then obviously executing when those kids are on campus. And I think with both of these Missouri natives, Georgia's done a heck of a job on offense.
That's exactly right. And you're right. When Kirby gets on a case, this is the beauty of having the staff that Georgia does. Hartley's going to get guys on campus like this. McLendon's going to get campus. And then you pick based upon personality. If this guy, and when he said, I'm coming to SEC, you look at his offer list and he has made it clear, like, stay away if you're not. And all of a sudden, that's the type of tenacious personality where you're like, oh yeah, let's get Coach Smart on over here, because he's going to talk your head off. Or somebody else like a George Pickens flip. George is tenacious, but he's not the same level of tenacious. He's not the same type of tenacious. You get McLendon in a room, you got to kind of chill out a little bit with him. This feels good, and he does take it personal. This is why Florida and South Carolina, like, T's and P's to all y'all for the next 10 years. You beat Kirby once, and South Carolina snuck in and beat Kirby, and he has made it a personal attack. It's no longer he hates losing more than he likes winning, and it's a personal attack. Same on the recruitment trail. And so, yes, I feel the same thing. We're going to come back after this, and I'm going to ask John about 2 names that showed out on G-Day that he gave us some insight to, and maybe we're even ahead of schedule, which is insane for them, right after this. John, the 2 names that really, really highlighted a great deal for Georgia at G-Day. A lot of names. Daniel and I got on this and said the second team defense in and of itself could just wreck fools. And so I'm going to give 3 names actually, and then let you talk about them as they come to you. The 3 names that really flashed to us: Damon Wilson, just absolute stud. Mpemba, absolute stud. And then actually CJ Allen. I was enamored with CJ, truth be told. The other 2 were freaks, but my eye went to CJ the entire time he was on the field. These 3 seem to be, in my mind, second team already. They are right behind the entrenched starters already as freshmen. This is insane to me. John, tell us your view. They seem to be ahead of schedule. Are you surprised by this?
A little bit. I think Mpemba, between the 3, is the most surprising. We've well-documented two-way guy, really thought, speaking of Missouri, by the way, Missouri native, another guy who we thought, because he had focused on tight end and offense so much, it was going to take a little bit more time for everything to click defensively. But the freakish nature of his build and athleticism, it's just gonna translate, even if it's in a rotation or on occasion. It's going to translate. 6'5", 6'6", 250, chiseled, rocked up. It just works regardless of who's lining up against him. So as that technique continues to develop, and my goodness, it already looks like it's taken a step at UGA, that's the one that it's impressive that he's making these moves. I think Wilson and Allen a little bit more polished. All 3 of them, though, explosion is kind of the word that comes to mind. Allen on contact. Yes. And I think Wilson off the line. I mean, that one play, I think near the goal line, when he was on top. He's dipping under the offensive tackle before he's set. And for those who can't visualize it, I'm sure you've probably seen it by now. The offensive tackle knows it's a pass, obviously. So he kick slides a couple of steps. And by that point, in 2 steps, Wilson, who is literally further away, is already at his rib, dipping underneath the offensive tackle in 2 steps. And Georgia doesn't recruit poorly on the offensive line. Let's just say that. We don't want to single out anybody negatively, but just the twitch to get off the line of scrimmage and the polish to play on that low of a plane and work an angle that science doesn't agree with towards the quarterback. It's a 3-step drop, Clint. It's a 3-step drop, and it's a sack from the blind side. I mean, just it doesn't always get into X's and O's. It doesn't always make sense. But when you watch the twitch that Wilson and Mpemba both play with, it's freaky. But Wilson's got the polish beyond it. And then I think for Allen, look, he was sort of, because he was in state, because it was a less dramatic recruitment, this wasn't as talked about, didn't go as deep as Damon Wilson and Mpemba's recruitment did. Or flips or anything like that. It was kind of conventional. But I mean, you watch the tape and you just see so much modern game and explosion within that you knew it would translate pretty quickly. And my goodness, I think he's probably ahead of schedule. Even though we expect him to be very good, this was a great linebacker class in particular. Right. So you kind of expected all of them to be good, but you're like, who's the first one that's going to flash? So I do think that is a bit of a surprise in and of itself. But when you're talking about the best linebacker class in the country last year, that's right, we shouldn't be surprised that either of them were first to flash. But yeah, Allen, I think, is the biggest and the most built to play kind of that conventional SEC ball. And we saw those flashes from a physicality standpoint, especially in short areas back on G-Day.
You need to trademark "science disagrees with." That was the perfect phrase you use. You need to trademark that.
Go Google that play, Georgia fans, if you hadn't seen it. How could science explain this?
And you're right, because if you maybe a little bit more in the weeds, the second a defensive lineman or defensive player, especially when you're rushing, you can get your elbow or your back of your arm on the back of an offensive lineman, right? So you dip down, and the second your elbow touches thigh, butt, back, you've won. Like, you've now put yourself in a position. He's toast. There's nothing he can do but grab you. That's it. And right off the edge, that dip in rhythm, it was flawless. I was watching it with my kids, and the play had gone 2 seconds, and I saw that dip, and I yelped, and I paused it. No, nothing else had happened. I just saw him off the top, and and they're like, why are you rewinding it?
Yeah, even compared to the other Georgia D linemen, it's like it's fast forwarding versus regular motion
Yes.
when he comes off the line. So
Yes.
that consistency is alone is a threat. I mean, ask Nolan Smith, right? I mean, that
There you
alone
go.
is a threat and makes an offensive tackle say, dang, I really got to get deep in this kick step. And that allows for more space to operate counter moves, all of those things. So just the threat, it's like a Tyreek Hill, like a wide receiver who's so fast. Those DBs are like pre-snap. Okay, I got to protect the deep third. Okay, well, great. Everything underneath is available now.
That's right.
The same type of concept with an edge rusher like Damon Wilson, who was credited with 2 sacks, even though, I mean, just crazy to see that right out of the gate, but happy for him. And obviously Georgia reloading as usual there on defense.
I think the biggest indication that CJ, I don't want to single out CJ because you're right. There was 3-headed attack in that class. And I do want to give Bowles and the rest of them, Raylan, they're great recruits. Here's how great they are. And here's what I know. They're already second team. Ryan Davis said, "Thank you. I'm out of here. I see the writing on the wall."
Right.
And the second that news hit, right after Jade ate Ryan, he goes, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what's happening here." You're like, okay, I hate to see him go, but I say good luck to you, kind sir, because this man over here has gotten on campus and from the moment has established himself. They are ahead of schedule. I was actually, to your point, I was shocked CJ was ahead of schedule. I had hope for him to develop because SEC linebacker, you need some time. I'm wrong. I'm sorry, CJ. Let me take back my words. Of course, this is scrimmage, but we're fans, and I'm going to overreact because it's fun to overreact. This has been John Garcia. John, where can the people find you?
Yeah, throughout the Locked On Network, and of course via social media, John Garcia _JR on all platforms.
John has also done some things talking about NIL deals as well as new rules that are coming for NC on the Twitter feed. He encourages me and educates me on a lot of stuff, and I use it all the time. So get over there, follow him. John, thanks for being with us. This is Locked On Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we will see you all next time.